You're fired. Well, no, that's more like loud firing. You're fired. Yeah, that's more quiet. That's quiet firing. But anyway, you may be about to lose your job because your head is on the chopping block and you don't even know it.
Welcome to the Licensed to Live show, where professionals, doctors, champions, VIPs, attorneys, and those in public office discover strategies that help you restart and gain what is lost when you find yourself accused. If another has doubted your integrity, questioned your credentials, or caused your actions to come under scrutiny, you are in the right place. On the other hand, if you have never felt the knot in the pit of your stomach when legal papers are served, the heartbreak of disappointing your family when the lock clicks shut on handcuffs, or had to appear before a board of review, then be aware, the longer you serve, the more likely you are to find yourself under the microscope of those who judge. Prepare yourself for this uncomfortable possibility. Now, here's your host, Dr. Jarrett Patton.
Welcome to this episode of Licensed to Live. My name is Dr. Jarrett Patton, and I am your host for our journey together today and every day you choose to listen to this show. If you or anyone you know has been dissed in their career, please invite them to join us along this journey. Simply go to your favorite podcast player and hit subscribe. That way you get the most up-to-date information about career challenges and life changes. Today, we're going to be talking about quiet firing. I know a lot of you guys have heard about quiet quitting. Some of you guys have heard about quiet firing. We are going to talk about the things you need to do so you can keep your job rolling strong throughout this topsy-turvy economy. Well, there has been a lot of talk about quiet quitting and even quiet firing in the literature right now. As you guys know, I'm a member of the Forbes Coaches Council, and I often get asked for input on different articles and stories, and there's been lots of that information going on. And, well, we're not really going to be talking about the quitting part because we've had a few episodes on quitting before. But just if you haven't heard of this concept, quiet quitting is when you slowly just check out of your job. You don't really care. You're not really living up to those top standards that everybody wanted you to live up to. And you simply kind of fade away until you finally pull the trigger and just quit. And that is what quiet quitting is all about in general. And I don't recommend that strategy for anybody. If you're just sick and tired of what you're doing, simply make a plan and move on. Get that notice, whether it's 2 weeks, 2 months, whatever you need to do, and just keep it move on. So quiet quitting is not a real strategy that I endorse, and most people out there won't really endorse that because it doesn't really get you ahead of anything. Just stand up and quit. But the topic today is about quiet firing, and we're going to get into that because a lot of you guys are being set up to be fired and you don't even know it. And we'll talk about that right after we finish thanking our sponsors. Hey, this is Dr. Jarrett Patton. Do you need more positivity in your life? No matter what part of your life you want to transform, positive affirmations can help you achieve your goals. But sometimes making permanent changes can be difficult. Designed with you in mind, Licensed to Live. Daily affirmations to rebuild your life will inspire and equip you to become the best version of yourself. Licensed to Live. Daily affirmations to rebuild your life will set you on the path to changing your mindset, beliefs, speech, and ultimately your actions. You can change your life now by getting your copy at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, your finer book retails, or licensedtolive.com. That's licensedtolive.com.
Something smells good. EH3 coffee. EH3 coffee. Premium organic. Nothing better than waking up. EH3 in your cup. Premium organic. EH3 coffee. Nothing better than in the middle of your day. EH3 coffee.
This is Super Bowl champion Mike Logan, and you are listening to License to Live.
Make sure you get your EH3 coffee. It's now available at walmart.com. Now let's talk about quiet firing. And what does that mean? And well, quiet firing is basically you being set up to be let go. Sometimes it's due to your doing. Sometimes it has nothing to do with what you're supposed to be doing. It's basically a little game that's played with leadership and management that sets you up so that they can feel good about letting you go. And so this is something I've been seeing happening a lot more when people are calling me up for strategy sessions. And if you ever want to talk to me, just go to Time with Dr. Jarrett, set up a strategy session with me, and we can talk about your situation in detail. But I've been hearing a lot of these strange stories from people who, suddenly lost their job and things seem to be going well. They didn't really see it coming. And let's face it, the economy today is making people have to make difficult choices that include labor choices. So as far as you're knowing, you're just showing up to work, you're going to work every day, doing what you do, collecting that paycheck every 2 weeks, and you're feeling good. But there are pressures, particularly in healthcare, on these health systems and hospitals that are losing money. With everything else getting more expensive, with so much care going on in COVID and the way things have changed, and they had to change the way they were seeing patients and voluntary procedures shut down and all the things that were happening over the last couple of years, people have to make some tough choices. And these choices may involve you. Perfectly good employee that seems to be doing a perfectly fine job until all of a sudden you're not. And then, well, we got to let go of a few people. You're going to be one of the people we let go. So let's talk about who is at risk for being quietly fired. A lot of times it could be that long-term employee. You could have given a couple of decades to your service and your company, and you've been doing a very good job. Nobody tells you much. You just want to keep yourself together and perform well, the best you can for your task. And you would think that these are the people that are the backbone of the society, but we're talking about difficult choices. And sometimes leadership and management, they get caught up in the numbers game. They're looking at spreadsheets and the mandate comes down. You need to cut 20% of your budget, or you need to cut 3% of your employees, or you need to cut your department by X number of people. And there is no rhyme or reason to it. And a lot of times, most people are doing their jobs well, because then you may get, loudly fired and you just get out of there because you weren't doing your job in the first place. But those of you that are doing it, if you are a long-term employee, you may be at risk. And why is that? Well, you tend to be a little more costly than many people because you've been around, you've advocated for yourself for a while and asked for salary adjustments over the time. And by being there, you have a good amount of vacation stored up. You have a higher than average salary for others in your position. And this makes you, unfortunately, an easy target to say, oh, well, isn't it time for you to retire? Or maybe it's time for us to separate our ways. So if you are that long-term employee, or you are much higher paid than other people doing your job, watch your back. Keep your head on a swivel, because somebody may be setting you up to be fired. And the final thing that kind of makes you at risk is when you're looking at your job itself and the things that you used to do, but for some reason, your job doesn't seem to satisfy you as much. It seems more unbearable. Some of those tasks that you don't like doing continue to start to rear their ugly head. And you're like, this job sucks. So they start making you think that there's something wrong with this job that you've been in love for quite some time. So these are kind of the at-risk categories that may get you set up for this quiet firing. Let's talk about some of the signs of quiet firing. I mean, if you've never had a performance issue in your job, and then all of a sudden you're getting some maybe quasi performance issue things, they seem like they're minor things, but they're being brought to your attention. And you kind of wonder why, because, well, you've done a good job all this time. You have been trying to get yourself through and bring others along the way and just stand up to do what you believe in and do what you were brought on board to do. And then all of a sudden, if you're coming into your yearly review and things aren't looking so good, or they say, oh, your metrics are off, or your performance around this set of objectives aren't where it needs to be, you need to perk your ears up and take heed, because one, you need to fix that performance issue if you want to hang on to this job. And two, if this doesn't really seem like a performance issue to you, it may not be. And this is something that you may need to think about very carefully, particularly if this is coming from your boss or even other coworkers. Another sign of quiet firing is when you're asked to do more for even less. So you're asked to do more. So what could this mean? What could this look like? Maybe you're having to work more night shifts. Maybe you have to be on call more often. Maybe you work more weekends when you didn't have to do that before. And well, you're not getting any more compensation. You're not getting reciprocated days off. And you're just seeming to be asked to do even more for less. And this could come in a form of resources too. So perhaps they may cut an assistant from you, or they may cut another position that is integral to your position. And so it's really like a partner or somebody that can help. And when these positions get cut, then that means more work goes upon your shoulders. That means that you have to do the job of two people. And I know some of you fire starters all out there are already doing the job of maybe 2 or 3 people because you work in a defunct system. Let's face it. But if you're still a superstar, you're still pushing out that work for 2 or 3 people. You're 1.0 on the FTE chart, but then, you're really like working 1.8 or 2.1 or maybe even 2.7 because you're doing so many things. Well, this could be a sign. And so I know for sure some of you listeners out there fall in this category. So think carefully. What does it mean if you're being asked to do more for less? Because, well, what does this do? This makes you more unhappy with your job. Why do I have to work weekends? Why do I have to work nights? Why did my call get turned up so many times? And you sit here asking yourself these questions and may have some resistance to stepping up to do those things because you're not getting the resources necessary to do these extra tasks. And that's when your spidey senses pop up and your spidey senses start to say, boy, something really doesn't feel right here. I don't know what it is. I don't know what's going on, but it just doesn't feel right. Listen to those signs from your gut, because sometimes, it's not this verbal stuff. It's not this written communication. It's these other forms of communication that may tip you off to something. So don't just brush it off and saying, oh, I'm working at a $6 billion company and they're going to be fine and I'm going to be fine and we don't have to worry about this stuff. But if these are real things that are coming into your life, take heed, take notice, and think about it, because your head could be on the chopping block. And then finally, another sign of this quiet firing occurs when maybe some important tasks are suddenly taken from you, something that you've done time and time again, and you've done a good job, and it's something that must be done, and you're happy to do it. But then all of a sudden, these important tasks get taken from you. So it may go something like this. It's on Friday afternoon. Oh, hey there. That board meeting presentation that you're supposed to do on Monday. Don't worry about that. We're going to take that from you and we'll take care of it all. Don't you even worry about it. We're going to do the board presentation for you and you just go about your business. Now, That actually happened to me when I was loudly fired. I certainly wasn't quietly fired, but you have to get into License to Live to know what that's all about. But these important tasks that are taken from you can be another sign of quiet firing. So again, folks, when you're looking at your risk factors and your risk categories of quiet firing, know if you've been a long-term employee or you're highly paid, or if your spidey senses start going off, or suddenly, all of a sudden, you're wondering where these performance issues are coming from. Take heed, but never fear, never fear. We will talk about things to do if you think you're being quietly fired right after we finish thanking our sponsor.
The time is now to refresh your career. We help doctors, lawyers, executives, and VIPs refresh and restart. Dr. Jarrett's coaching helps you build confidence, gain more credibility, develop more leadership skills, and gain clarity in your career path. Want to climb the executive ladder or branch out on your own? We'll put your career in overdrive. Visit drjarrett.com and sign up for your free strategy session.
So what are you to do if you think you're being quietly fired? In this economy, there's tremendous pressure on these corporations to save costs. And the biggest cost on most people's payroll is labor. That payroll ends up being one of the biggest expenses of nearly every corporation. So as you're kind of thinking if you are being quietly fired, there's a couple things that I want you to do. One, upfront. Upfront is communicate. Communicate with your supervisor. Try to get to the root of why these performance issues are taking place. What can you do to correct them? Why you're being asked to do so much more with so much less. Why these things are happening. And there may be a good explanation. And that's usually when you'll get that information about, well, we're being asked to cut these costs across the board. And this is just the fallout from that. This is something that we've been asked to do from the Board of Trustees because we are losing money. And there may be some great explanation for it. You know, who knows? Your boss could be going through a tough time too and needed to lash out on somebody. And hey, your performance day was on that last day where they had that argument with their spouse that really ticked them off. And yeah, well, you are the victim of some of their displaced anger. And so there's some of these things that you can get out by having direct communication with your supervisor. And if you're not really getting there with your supervisor, you may need to talk to your boss's boss in some of these cases, because you need to know what's going on and you need to know how to rectify it. So that's a simple one, but it does take strategies and skills of direct communication that you can give to people right up front. Now, my favorite tip, I want you to act like Santa. Make a list and check it twice. Yeah, they'll find out who's naughty and nice. They will be looking at you as a force not to be reckoned with if you act like Santa. So make a list and check it twice. So what does this list involve? One, take a look at your contract and see what kind of things are required of you in your contract. And most employment contracts today are pretty vague. They don't have a lot of specifics, simply because they're, well, like most contracts, not made to protect you. They're made to protect the employer. And they're not really in your favor either, which is why you need to read them and look over them. And a lot of times you probably need to get a lawyer involved to take a look at some of these things, because there may be some things you don't agree with and you want to get rid of. And yes, that's okay. But you look at that contract to see if there's anything in that could explain what's going on right now. Second thing to take a list of is that job description. See what that official job description was, if you can find it when you got hired. But then if there are any open employments for a similar position that you have, see what they're asking of new employees to do, and see if this is just something that your job is coming more in line with what they want today, or they're simply just asking you to do more things because, well, they figure, you've been around forever, and they'll do it. Kind of like those old Life cereal commercials. Ask Mikey, he'll eat anything. Then on your make like Santa, make a list and check it twice, you write a description of your job, because this is the thing that most people forget, especially with good employees that have been good for a really long time. Your bosses don't check on you every day. They're not looking to follow up on the work you're doing. A lot of times they don't even know what you're doing. So this is when you have to make a list of your current job and the things that you're doing in your job to advocate and say, hey, do you remember these things and these additional projects I took on, or these additional hours I was seeing patients in the clinic, or these additional stories I turned into the publisher? Any of these things can be true, but you need to write a description of your current job and the things that you're doing, because sometimes it's simple as communicating how much work you're actually doing to say, oh, I didn't know you were doing all of that. And then things suddenly change. You've called the bluff, and now somebody else is going to be quietly fired. So if you go through those strategies, communicating with your supervisor and making a list like Santa, you will be able to avoid being quietly fired. But if you are fired, loudly, quietly, or any other way, I want you to know that that's not the end of your story. This is only the beginning of the next chapter, because most often when people get fired, they find something bigger, they find something better, and they find something that makes them more happy. And honestly, that's what happened to me in my life, and I couldn't see it for a long time. But now, looking at all of these years back, these are the things that are meant to happen in your life. You are being made for these moments in life. And if you happen to be fired, remember, it's not the end of the world. This is not a measure of your self-worth. This is not a measure of your value. That title that you used to hold, all of those things, this is only the platform for you to rise up on the next level. Remember, fire starters, if you or anyone you know has been disengaged, dissatisfied, disgruntled, disenfranchised with your career, please invite them to join us along this journey. Just simply go to your favorite podcast player and hit play and hit subscribe. And while you're there, hey, give me some feedback. Give me a rating. I love to get ratings. Please give me some ratings out there, and I will make sure I'm keeping you up to date with the most up-to-date information on career challenges and life changes. And I hope to see you out there on social media. You know I hang out there at Dr. Jarrett. Spell out the word Dr. J-A, 2 R's, E, 1 T, and particularly on LinkedIn, because that's where I am in between episodes. And until then, I will see you next time.
No matter how disheartening the moment of accusation sounds, how deep the pain of immobilization stabs, or how bleak your future looks, no one can take away your license to live. Keep Dr. Jarrett's expertise handy and unlock your future. Go to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or another podcast player and subscribe right now to Licensed to Live. See you next time.